Mr. Walton, did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food?
But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden. As a part of a family that explores the consciousness. I'm the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting from New York, upstate near the Great Lakes, it's Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We are live on KTOK Digital Broadcasting. Make sure you download the Fringe FM app to listen to the broadcast. Call-in number for tonight, if you want to call in, and it's kind of, I think it's pretty rare to be able to talk to Greg on a live show. I don't know how many live shows he does, but it's 1-800-588-0335. Last time Gordon White called in, if we don't get more callers, and then he said he's never coming back. He's never coming back. So, not
gotta call everybody, please.
But other than that, I don't think I have any announcements other than I hope you all had a great weekend, as I had the best one I could possibly have. But let's just get this show on the road. Greg Carlwood is the creator, researcher, and host for the successful show, The Higher Side Chats, providing community discussion for a range of conversations which seek to shed light on suppressed knowledge, hidden agendas, and the questions we find ourselves asking. Through well-informed study of his guests and topics, Greg brings to life a breadth of information through a unique style of well-versed dialogue, and you can find The Higher Side Chats where podcasts can't be found, WTHC Radio, as well as thehighersidechats.com. And thanks for coming on, Greg. It's good to have you back, man. It's been a minute.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me. Night Stalker. What's happening?
Welcome,
Dude,
brother.
Your website is like, I would copy your website if it wouldn't piss you off or make me look like a tool. Like, I really do dig the website. And your shirts are still the best. Like, you've been doing the same thing. Like, I don't think you've done anything different other than, like, you know, the live radio stuff, which I think is really cool. And you're still killing it, man. And you know, I've tried to talk to somebody about your story the other day, and they're like, nah, that's not true. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you, like, this dude, worked at GameStop and put all his mind and soul into his podcast. And now he's like one of the best. I don't know why people just think it's crazy.
Too kind. Well, a lot of people don't want to think that they have every option that I had. You know, a lot of people like to see someone who's successful and say, well, they had parents that helped them out, or they were born with the silver spoon, or, you know, they have this talent or that thing that I don't have. And the reality is, if you just do something consistently and you keep making it better as you go along, you can pretty much do whatever you want. I really believe that because I have to go off my own experience. As you say, I was working at GameStop. I was a college dropout. My only path forward was retail management, which is a road to nowhere. And I just saw all these interesting authors and researchers that I wanted to interview. And this is 10 years ago. So there really wasn't a lot of venues for that except for Coast to Coast AM and Alex Jones. And Coast to Coast has so many commercial breaks that they never really could get too deep. And then you got Alex Jones screaming over all his guests. So I was like, hey, maybe I should make a show where these people actually get to present some of this deep and dense material without any interruptions. And, you know, surprise, surprise, that formula seems to have worked. And I've pretty much been doing it that way for 10 years. I feel like if it's not broke, don't fix it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've overcomplicated stuff for sure. So I'm trying to narrow down everything.
The model,
you know,
the model you use for the Plus members too is pretty revolutionary. Like you did this all pre-Patreon. Like you kind of changed the game for a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of people doing that same model now.
Well, thanks. And I mean, in the beginning, I really didn't know how to do it. I was just doing a donation basis. You know, some shows like No Agenda, they do the value for value thing, and that's cool. But a lot of real estate on the airtime gets taken up by thanking those people. And in the early donation days, I had a couple of people coming through and donating huge amounts, like on a monthly basis, and then asking me to interview certain people. And I kind of feel obligated. It's like, well, this guy's donated $1,000 3 months in a row.
Yeah.
Do I not get this money anymore, or do I enter? It just didn't feel right. And so I tried to pivot and democratize the whole thing, so I just get a little bit of money from a bunch of different people, and then no one could really tell me what to do. But I definitely wasn't the first. Red Ice Radio was the first show I ever saw do this, and their show used to be a lot more like mine or like yours. They have gone full alt-right now. I can say that because they say it in their intro. A lot of people get pegged as alt-right that aren't actually, you know, like maybe Joe Rogan, for example, but he wears that proudly. And I felt like, well, great. Now there's even less competition for me to do this thing because the show I used to really, really like is no longer here. And these guests need a place to talk about things that are not right-wing politics. What a weird avenue to go down.
Yeah. So you were one of the first people that jumped on the edge of this thing too. And man, I remember, you know, back in we'll get into some deep topics here too, but I like to reminisce like back in the day, the first time, you know, I
think we all do these days.
Yeah.
God, anything to get away from 2020, like let that nostalgia flow.
Right. And I remember the first time I turned on the Higher Side chats, I just when I heard the theme music, I was like, man, this is cool. This is already going to be cool. I know it. Anybody that would come up with this, and it kind of gets addicting after that. Oh, well, I got to admit, running a network and doing a show 5 nights a week and trying to keep up with everybody's shows, like I haven't been able, and maybe you can relate, like I haven't been able to just kick back and listen to podcasts anymore like I used to, but there's so many of them, man, you know?
It's so true. And I'm in awe of what you do. I could not imagine doing this 5 nights a week. I put out 5 shows a month. And yeah, there's a lengthy editing process, and I'm doing really deep dives into the preparation and reading at least one of their books if they have multiples. And, you know, I try to put a lot of hours into making those 5 shows really great. But, you know, sometimes you have a dud or two, and then it's like, well, half my month kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't imagine being consistently good 5 nights a week. I mean, it's impressive.
Well, it's not possible, I can tell you, because I'm not consistently good 5 nights a week. I can tell you that.
You are.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Some shows just really like go off it's live, right? And I like doing live because when people are listening now, they know they're right there with me. And if I screw up, it's real. And like I'll have nights where I kind of like, you know, go off and rant and get into like some deep psychological stuff. And then when it's over, I'm like, Jesus
That's
Christ.
The best stuff.
Yeah, but I feel like
that's the good stuff though.
I mean, maybe Greg, I don't know. I feel like, man, did I just ruin whatever shot I had at my career in this, you know? So,
we're making our own careers.
That's right. And that's something I want to talk to you about too, because last time I talked to you, it was almost like 3 years ago. And the censorship already started, but now, man, it's on a whole new level. It's a gaming type censorship. And I want to build a community at the Fringe FM. And this is what I've always wanted to do, is build a community that's strong enough to where we can have something that doesn't, kind of like your podcast, where like, yeah, you can censor me on all these places, whatever. I'll find another server. I'll put my stuff up. We're going to be heard. But it's not getting easy, my friend. It's getting a little harder, you know?
Right. It absolutely is. And it's very important to at least try to control your streams. Don't get too vested in any corporate middleman between you and your people. Patreon, I actually have a Patreon because some people are like, they don't understand signing up on my website or this or that, or they want all their subscriptions in one place, whatever. I have it enabled, but it's a small piece of the memberships I have. But at least there you have access to the emails of the people who have signed up to support you. And that's a beautiful thing, because Patreon has kicked people off. And if they happen to decide to kick you off and you maintain those lists, you can contact those people and say, hey, you got to find me over here now. But if you have 70,000 YouTube subscribers, 50,000 likes on your Facebook page, that just goes away when they decide to purge you. So you got to be really careful about where you're investing your time, what platforms you're relying on. I always kind of thought conspiracy folks knew that, but yet I'm seeing people's YouTube channels get wiped away in 2020 and they don't have backups. They don't have any way to contact their people. And it's like, what did you think was going to happen? This is pretty obvious. Like you said, it's been going on for several years. I put a small little commercial in front of my YouTube that's just for the YouTube version of the show that says, hey, you probably shouldn't be listening here. I don't like this fucking platform, but this is, one of the places people discover the show. So it's going to be here. I have 70,000 subscribers. I'm not walking away, but I want you to know that it could be gone any moment. You should be going to the website anyway. Podcast apps are better than YouTube.
Yes.
And, it is what it is. But, people got to be aware that if you rely on any of these big platforms, your days are numbered.
And you know what? I should be saying that stuff too. So I'm saying the same thing to y'all. I don't have that many subscribers, but still, like, there are just some people that God dang, they wonder why YouTube's controlling everything. And then you see these people that just won't use anything but YouTube, and you're like, that's why, right?
Well,
there.
It's the challenge of doing a video show, because I know that it's difficult to host video content, especially if you want to go live in the way YouTube can. I've always been an audio show. People have asked me to go video, and I just don't see the need. A lot of the guests I'm interviewing are remote. Some of them are older. They don't know how these things work. It's just a lot. You can be a lot more nimble if you stick to audio, and you can edit it to make the show better and more entertaining, more streamlined. You can't do that with video because obviously the mouths would be moving all weird and it'd be a bunch of jump cuts. So, it is what it is. But I hope that people in our shoes do make some serious changes and retrain our audiences to go to each other's websites, because it's getting hard out here for a pimp.
Yeah, it's getting hard out here for a pimp, right? Yeah, because truly, like, if my Patreon goes, the studio goes down, the rent goes down. Like, people, and I hope that people realize that. But you know what? I think we're moving into an age, like, this COVID thing hasn't been entirely, a pain in the ass in the way that it's kind of forcing people to be creative and express themselves and learn how to do this stuff. But, I mean, I don't know. Like, I know you're probably tired of talking about it, too. And I can tell by some of your last shows. If I asked you, I said, hey, Greg, what is the craziest show that you actually believe is truth and not something that you question? I can't ask you that question anymore. Every one of your shows is just unique in a way that I haven't even thought about. Like,
thanks, man. And it's really all the guests, it's 80-20. I do 20% of the talking. I try to set them up well. And I try to, when I read one of their books, I will go through and say, what do I think are the, say, 10 most interesting things? And I got to make sure I ask them about those things. It's a pretty simple formula, I think. I guess I just have a good eye for what's the best part of their book, or that a lot of people feel like what piques my interest also piques theirs. I try to avoid the, sometimes we get into conspiracy 101 stuff and you got to read 4 or 5 chapters into a book to get past it because we already know about that stuff. And it's like, what's unique about this person? What does this person say that no one else is saying? And it's also fun to sometimes take the most extreme thing someone said in their book, read it, and then be like, I mean, do you believe that? Like, elaborate on that for me, because sometimes people get writing and they just kind of like go off the handle and it's kind of like a rant, and they don't expect to have to explain it or own it later because, things in your book just get kind of glossed over as it's being read, and it's judged in its totality. But when you pull out those small details, sometimes without the surrounding context, they can be quite fun.
Yeah. Well, I always have fun too, listening to your show, but things get so deep. Like I don't do a lot of conspiracy stuff. I do more of like human potential, the occult, conscious exploration. But the other night, man, I don't know if you've had this guy on or not, because I haven't listened to all of your shows. I got to be honest. I haven't even listened to all of anybody's shows, but yours I listened to more of. But Dean Henderson came on, and he was gonna talk about the bloodlines, all the way back from the Nephilim and like he just laid out the whole thing. And I was like, all right, here's another guy that's going to lay out a conspiracy. He's going to tell me the whole story, and it's just going to be a bunch of stuff that he put together in his head, and it's not going to make sense. Well, it didn't. That's not how it happened. And I went back and looked at some of these facts like this dude's looking up, and it's amazing to me how accurate he was with most of it. And it really started freaking me out, dude, like to think about the controlled system of a crown, of a bloodline of people that have been controlling this thing from the beginning. And to some conspiracy theorists, they're like, well, duh. But me, like I question everything, man. But now I'm really starting to feel kind of shocked at how dumb I've been of not seeing it,
I mean, that was kind of the one that got me into everything was the bloodline thing, was the fact that is our political system really that much of an illusion where all of the presidents have all been part of the same bloodline? That kind of really
it sounds like total BS though when you hear it, right?
It sounds like it, but when you get into it, it's not. I mean, there's honestly mainstream news video clips, like this is like pre-Obama days, talking about how this girl at her school project found it. Like she just used the maternal side of the family because nobody in history had tracked the mothers on the family to realize that they were all related. It's just in our faces. But
Cheney and Obama are second cousins once removed or something like that, and it's just like, what? These are two people who couldn't seem more different in the way they look and their political persuasions, and yet they are from the same family. And it is nuts. But it's funny you mention Dean Henderson, because when I'm going to do a show, I tend to try to at least listen to the last episode to get a feel for where they are on certain things. Not that it's always like that. Shows can be pretty isolated and separate from each other, but still. And I listened to that, and I was like, oh, Dean Henderson, he has been on my list. Let me see about his website. And then I look, he doesn't have a website. Nope. And then I listen to the end. I fast forward to the end, and he's like, I don't have a website. My books are on Amazon. And I was like, well, maybe before I get off the call with Joe, I might ask him for that contact info, because Dean is pretty damn awesome, and he fits right in the wheelhouse of what I'm interested in.
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely give that to you, man, because I know he wants to do it. As a matter of fact, he's like, I got to do 3 shows a week, because if I don't, my stuff don't get out there, Damn. Yeah, like when did they start taking WordPress sites down? Like that freaked me out. Like they took your WordPress site down, they froze his bank accounts. Like what?
Okay, some of that stuff I really, that's a degree I haven't really experienced yet. And when it comes to your WordPress website, I think it's mostly about where it's hosted. Yeah. And does the host you're with have a history of draconian measures on their websites? I mean, I don't think WordPress, the company, I think it's too decentralized. I think WordPress itself is just kind of like an open source thing, as opposed to Squarespace or something, which is a subscription-based website platform that could just say, nah, you're out of here. So you got to pay attention to where your host is. And it's important, I built my whole thing, but I'm not necessarily the most technically skilled at the website side of things. And it's been through several iterations. And now I have a guy that I trust a lot, and I have a good team of people. Instead of hiring freelancers for these things that were over my head, I got a team now. So they have made sure that I can focus just on making great content, and they can make sure that my stuff's backed up, that my host is reliable. And if they start seeing any of these red flags like, the host just removed this particular host where we have your site just removed 4 channels, I'd be like, okay, well then we have to move. And even if they removed me, we have backups of everything, and they're skilled enough to make me a new website somewhere else. And the only thing that I worry about is the payment processors, because that's your income. Clearly that should be high on your radar. And PayPal has removed a few people, Patreon's removed a few people, not like YouTube has. So I feel like it's kind of safe, but worst case scenario, I would just go to where the porn sites get their credit cards processed. Some shady place overseas where they're going to charge you 3 times as much to process those payments, but it still gets done. If there's those kind of places out there, then that might be where conspiracy goes next, because we're getting kind of pushed to the fringes, and that's okay. That's where we belong. It should be anyway. Counterculture, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Love the fringes.
Right. But I'm glad that you see that for what it is too, because I was thinking WordPress. Like I don't know, but I did have somebody try to hack the station one time, and when you cry out, "Oh man, I've been hacked," a lot of people are saying, "Oh no, you haven't been hacked. You just don't understand technology, or you're doing it for attention." And I'm like, "No, dude, I see the Python code right here. It's called a monster lib. It's a common hack." And you pull the code out and you show it to them, and everybody gets silent. And they're like, "Well, why would they hack you?" And honestly, the one time it did happen, I don't know why. Like, we didn't have a massive audience or anything. I just think sometimes these people do this stuff. I think you could just pay people, honestly, to hack somebody if they pissed you off or something. Like it's not always a big grand conspiracy,
That's true. It's true. Back in the day, when the phone line would drop a call, it was always the CIA's listening in right when we got deep. They didn't want us to talk. It's like, sometimes a call just drops. Yeah. And that's the new version of that is, something technical happens with the website and it's like, oh, I got hacked. But I have experience being hacked. Somebody hacked my Twitter, which is not a huge deal. It's actually a very small deal. I could care less, really. But I woke up one morning and someone had changed the description of my show to being like, trying to usurp Joe Rogan. Everything was about Joe Rogan. And because he follows the Higher Side Chats, that means that, and I follow him, so you're allowed to DM people in that situation. So they took advantage of that and DM'd Joe Rogan a bunch of crazy stuff and made a bunch of tweets. I just felt like embarrassed about the whole thing. I'm like, hey, this is probably not on your radar at all, man. But clearly this wasn't me. Like, we followed each other for years and we don't cross that line. I mean, I don't cross that line because I know everyone's trying to get the dude's attention. So I'm just like, I'll let you be. But when that happened, I was just like, man, you're going to burn bridges that I haven't even built yet. Just leave me alone.
What a weird hack, though. What a weird thing to do. Like,
and that's why I think it had to be a 16-year-old kid or something, because you could have done something so much more interesting than start schoolyard fights with Joe Rogan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure. So how are you on the Magick these days? Right? Are we still doing Magick? Are we still successful?
I consider Magick to be a lot like exercise. It is a mental exercise, and like exercise, I know I should do it, and I don't do it as often as I should. And when you go on a long hiatus, it's kind of hard to get back into. Even something as simple as swinging a kettlebell around, you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Do I need to look up a routine on YouTube? And Magick is even more dense and crazy. So I'm not as good as I have been. Like I've always respected, but I really, and I've never been a serious practitioner. I just tried a few things to see how it goes, and little things like sigil magic are interesting because it's just like trying to create abundance and positivity and bring good things into your life. And there are times where I've done sigil magic for certain things, like really just like let me get like removing obstacles. Like, let me get every guest I want to get, you know, and anyone I send an email to, even the really high up there guys, like, make sure they get back to me, just things like that. And I've had to really second guess. I'm like, man, I think that might have worked, because what are the chances David Icke does get back to me 2 times in 6 months? Like, not good. So
he's out there. David Icke's around.
Yeah, but man,
true.
like, but here's the thing that we all know about David Icke. He might randomly like say yes to you randomly, and you just don't know how it happened. But to come on twice in a row to any show, I don't know. I think there was some energy behind that for sure. True.
So, I mean, really, I think that when you think about the things you want in your life and the attention required for magic, it's like, it's not much. It's pretty much worth it. Like, but you know, you look at people like Jason Momoa and you're like, I'd like to look like that. And it's like, okay, well then you need to lift heavy things 20 minutes a day. And you're like, well, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. What are you talking about? And it's like, we waste a lot more than 20 minutes a day. So magic is similar. I think you should invest the time in it because it does seem to yield results, even if it's just focusing on what you want. A lot of people don't even know what they want. If you asked to narrow down your top 3 desires in a few sentences, I don't know how many people could really do it. Oh, I want to be rich, you know, stupid stuff like that. But it's like, no, really hone in on what you specifically want, because you can't tell me that your consciousness can't manifest reality if you haven't decided on what you want and concentrated on it. Like, how do you know that it can't be brought into existence? You haven't even really tried.
That's right, man. You're so spot on about that. And I've been like really studying magic for a long time, and you know, it gets real formulaic and it gets a highfalutin, also gets super intellectual sometimes. But to really, what you're saying, like when you really dig into the fundamentals, like, okay, how does this work? Right? Like, why is it working? That's what's always fascinated me. And I think a lot of people are getting close. Like Joe, I don't know what your opinions are on this guy, but Joe Dispenza to me is pretty much putting the science behind a lot of it. I don't know. Are you familiar with him?
I've heard the name, but I'm not super familiar with Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he wrote a few books on it, but he talks about the stress responses when we get in magic, if you get your emotions involved and then you get the vision involved, right? You're putting a lot of energy into it. And he really talks about in his books and a ton of videos too now. I'd actually love to hear him on your show and have you question him, but
okay. I just looked him up, but he wrote Becoming Supernatural.
Yes,
I am familiar with that book. I think I have a relationship with that publisher, but no, I haven't had him on. But that's right up my alley, and I want to start doing more stuff like that. You know, you mentioned that you're more focused on the human potential,
right,
and that is great. If you look at a lot of the shows I've done this year, they really are more in that area of like, how can you improve your life? Because even though I still call the show a conspiracy show, like the conspiracy now is mainstream news. It's right there in your face. Do we really need any more education on that? You know, really, it's like, I don't want people to be living in fear and paranoia and thinking that we're all going to be bubble boys for the rest of our lives. So I'm trying to, you know, flex a little bit to pivot over to, you know, what about Ormus and weird stuff like that? Or one of my most recent guests was a rancher, a local rancher here. And it's like all about regenerative agriculture versus factory farms, because a lot of people thought the food supply was going to dry up this year, like the toilet paper supply did. And so I'm trying to tell people, look, secure yourself a local, like, all grass fed kind of better food source than what you're getting at the grocery store. We know a lot of things in the conspiracy world, we've known we needed to do them for a long time. We've known this was coming. These plans are foretold way in advance. There's a lot of foreshadowing out there. So why wait until the very last minute to really like use what you know? Like, what is the point of digesting conspiracy stuff if you're not prepared when it comes to your doorstep?
Yeah, exactly. And so I guess what you're saying is like, now it's not about planning and not doing this. Like, okay, now we have to kind of do this stuff. I mean, really, if we look at the way the future's coming, it could go really bad. Like, this could go really bad for sure. But we have to do this stuff. I think now we have to start taking better care of ourselves, but also understanding our own potential as individuals and as a community, you know, like what are we doing in our local communities? What are we doing in our online communities? Are we really doing anything? That's what gets me, because there's this, I guess this theory I have of what's called the perpetrator, kind of like the longing hero and the perpetrator victim thing, where we're at the tip of a triangle and we're looking out and we see the edges of the triangles on each side, right? We're just looking at the back side. And on the right side, you know, there's that longing and that hero and this big idea that we have inside of us. And on the left are all the people that have done all these things to us, like Monsanto, the bloodlines, etc. It's okay to know it, but if we don't move, like if we don't do anything about it, then that's pretty much like the power that we've given them, don't you think? I mean, they know how to keep us still, for sure.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And a lot of people do kind of have a problem with how critical I am of Alex Jones, because I go back to the time 10 years ago where all these shows didn't exist and there's just Coast to Coast and Alex Jones, and people say, you know, well, how can you say Alex Jones is controlled opposition? I'm like, well, one, because he existed in that time where that was the only option. He goes on The View. He goes on Piers Morgan. Whenever the mainstream wants to pretend that they're getting the alternative take, they bring on him. And because of his ranting and his personality and his presentation, he turns a lot of people off. He didn't turn me off because I'm already into this kind of stuff. But just by everyone I've ever talked to, I know that he clearly turns a lot of people off with his approach. And I think that's why the THC approach is better, because we're just talking here, you know, like we don't have to get crazy and yell and scream. But the point is, like, what solutions has Alex Jones offered in 15 years? I mean, what is he I think he really does keep people in those lower vibrations. Maybe
but
it's
he's been banned. How can you say that? He's banned.
I know. Well, sometimes they sacrifice a lamb to show other people what's about to happen. And once you do it to Alex Jones because he's served his usefulness, I also think they discard their assets sometimes. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, we're done with this guy. And now he can fend for himself. And that's kind of what I think happened in the Alex Jones case. But I don't really hate the guy. Actually, when I listened to him on some of these more recent long form podcasts like Joe Rogan's, I think he's quite funny. He's kind of a cool guy. When he's outside of the venue of his own show, he's actually much more palatable to me. But I still think that whether he knew it or not, he was serving a usefulness, and that usefulness is up. And now they don't need him anymore because there's too many shows doing the alternative thing that grew up on him, and they're doing it in a different way that doesn't turn people off. And I think, I don't want to say it's scaring people in power, but they definitely are deciding, as you say, to censor all these people for a reason. Why? If you're not worried about what's getting out there, why are you worried about censoring them?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, what I think what it is they want us to believe that they're aware of the influence that they have, and we know, like, I know you're smart, but other people aren't smart, and they need people to think for them. So you see what I mean? That's their justification. I think it's too much of an influence. They're causing I mean, look what's going on. And you're thinking, well, at least I think, like, it doesn't really matter people's intelligence levels. The point is to let them decide for themselves. You can't take that away from them, you know?
Yes.
It's stupid.
I've always tried to make that an important part of the show. Like, here is a guest's research. I'm going to help them make the best case for their perspective, but we're going to listen to another perspective next week and another one the week after that. I'm not telling you what to conclude. I'm just saying, make sure you've examined all the options, which is what really annoys me about this COVID thing, is they've created boxes where it seems like only liberals appreciate science and they have a monopoly on the science. And if you aren't a member of the Democratic Party or a supporter of Joe Biden's, then you're anti-science, which is so stupid. There are so many doctors, you and I have both interviewed, that do disagree with the mainstream narrative. The CDC would never have them on their boards, and they're still doctors. So what is the deal? Is it the PhD that you respect? Because I'll give you a list of PhDs that'll blow your mind, and they're not saying the same thing as Fauci.
Yeah, well, for sure. And these guys have been in the works, behind the scenes, patenting viruses since the 90s, man. And I do mean COVID and SARS and stuff like that. It's all documented too. Just they don't want you looking at that stuff. And the second those videos go up, they ban them. And then it's like, okay, well, you don't want us to see the truth. All right, we get that now. But I'm past all of it. But I get tired, Greg, of a lot of people. Every time I say, well, try this, they always, like when it comes to self-empowerment, but they always come back with something else. Well, you can't do that because they got satellite weapons and MiGs and this, and they're listening to your phone calls. It's just, there's no winning. I'm like, you know what? Well, then figure out how to astral travel and turn into a ghost and go into their freaking place and like rob them or something. Like, stop. I just can't get over the mentality of giving up. I give up. You know, that bothers me.
Absolutely. And it should. To me, the value of going down this road in the beginning was to see that the whole idea of the white picket fence and, you know, the wife in the apron waving to the neighbors and you're out there cutting the grass with a pipe. It's like, this is a facade. This is a facade created as what we should all strive for. And this idea that, you know, you're just going to work your way up the ladder and you're eventually going to be at the top of the company. And it's like, look, your lifespan only goes one way. So when you're 45 years old and you didn't climb that ladder, that's what that midlife crisis is all about. That's when you finally wake up to the fact that you've been sold a lie. Well, I wanted to wake up a little sooner than that. You know, I like to wake up around 25, you know, and then I can readjust my life accordingly. But it is very sad that without the internet, you know, our parents' generation and their parents, they didn't have these other options. And so we're very, very lucky that anybody can do pretty much anything they want. And if you can get just 1,000 people to pay $50 a year for whatever you do, that's $50,000. That's a decent salary. So it's not that hard. The internet is an infinite sea of people, whether you want to basket weave or make birdhouses or talk about conspiracies, you can pretty much do it. And there is no excuse anymore, because before you could say, well, I don't have $30,000 startup capital to buy a place with good foot traffic so that people can see my t-shirts in the window. It's like, you can start an online store right now for free, and it costs nothing. Essentially, it can cost about $100 maybe to get a few designs out there, and if you make the designs yourself, even less. So every opportunity is there now, and that was the value to me, is to see through the facade, the lie that we are sold, that we should just work for someone else, suckle at that corporate teat, and that milk is going to be so sweet. And I just never was into that. I mean, I dropped out of college because that road wasn't going well for me. I felt aimless. I felt screwed. But it's guys like Bill Hicks and George Carlin that I would really latch on to their worldview, and Terrence McKenna. And, you know, they open you up to so much more. And then you're like, you know, what is my potential? And if I'm going to be outside of the system, how high can I climb? And if I'm going to make money for me, how much money is really out there? Because a lot of people don't know how much money is out there because they've only got it trickled down from the company they work for. I used to run a $2 million store, and I got paid $30,000 a year. My checks, 2 checks a month, $1,100. I barely got by in San Diego, but I ran a $2 million store. Now, yeah, GameStop's doing a lot of stuff for me to make that store a success. But once I started selling my own product that I believed in, I was like, wow, there's a lot more money out here than I really realized. And,
yeah, man.
You know, I think a lot of people should know that. Like, if you're working in a certain industry and you like a certain type of thing, try making it yourself and getting it in front of people and making sure it's an A-quality product, and just see how many people are out there to buy it. Way more than you think. But fear holds us back.
Jeez.
Yeah, he just said it way better. Night Stalker, you know, I've been telling you that. I got Night Stalker online one night, just me and him, and I was like, "Look, let's get you out of this grocery store. Quit stocking shelves, all right?" So I started showing him like all this, you know, stuff and affiliate marketing. Look, that's not where it's at, but I did show him some stuff. I'm like, you could get,
Steve Cutts, that was cool, yeah.
Dude, you could just get paid if you really want to get paid by the hour, you don't have to. You can still make the same cash at home right now working there's so many online jobs at home now. It's crazy.
And like, the way you just described that, Greg, like, it's such the opposite way that I like envision in my head that it really explains why you're so successful. Like you just like broke it down while looking at the ceiling. Like how high can I climb? When I'm thinking about it being like my security is going to drop off. I can't quit my job or do all this stuff because I'll fall through the floor. Like you didn't mention consequences once. You're all thinking about success, and I think that's cool. You know, that's probably why you're doing good.
Thank you. And the beauty of it is you don't have to quit your job to do something online. Like with regular jobs, you do. Like if you want to pivot to another company, you've got to leave the company you're with. But the beautiful thing about this is you can do it in secret. Like I did THC without my job knowing about it for a long time. And there was eventually a day where I just told my boss, I'm not coming in anymore. He's like, did you get another job? I'm like, actually, I've been doing this show on the side and it's popping off and I just don't need to come in anymore. And today's the day. And my boss was actually a pretty cool guy. And we still talk today. And he's like really supportive and loves to see how this is exploded. And I really think that it's easier than people realize. Fear holds us back. Another thing that I've liked is I've had friends who, you know, I think we all do, where you'll go into a bar and you'll be like, man, this aspect of this bar really sucks. They need to do it this way. And everybody knows what they would do to make someone else's business right or better, but no one knows how to start at the beginning. And people also have this idea of, well, it has to be perfect. Or I've got to be the best. It's like, are you the best at what you do right now?
No.
Most of us aren't.
Well, actually,
you just have to be pretty good.
I'm pretty good at stocking.
He can stock them shells. You know.
Fair. Well, then maybe you found your calling. I don't know. I hope there's more out there for you.
Well, I talk to friends on here all the time, like Night Stalker and Amandala and other people that really have supported the show and helped out. And they, especially like Amanda, like she'll, you know, but she's successful at what she does. She has the same mentality, man. She's like, look, it doesn't have to be hard. You're making it hard in your mind. If you tell yourself, you know, $300 is a lot of money, why are you telling yourself that? It's not a lot of money, like compared to like what's out there. Yeah. I mean, there's markets. You got to sell $20 t-shirts to the market, but to say, man, $300 is a lot of money. I don't think I can make that in a day. You totally can make that in a day. You just have to break the numbers down. I don't know why we're talking about this. I don't know how compelling this is to everybody, but to me, it's
I hope it
great.
is compelling to people, honestly, because the way I can tie it in is to say that a lot of people are out there right now with jobs where you have to wear a mask 8 hours a day. And the plan is to crush a lot of people economically so that you are reliant on the system, which means you have to acquiesce to the vaccine. That is the linchpin issue, is trying to get as many people vaccinated as possible. And they are very clear about saying that they're going to, quote unquote, incentivize people. You're not going to be forced, but they're going to take every resource away from you if you don't get it. And so if you don't control your own life, you know, you better start soon, because if you're at a job where you have to wear a mask, that's the same job who's going to say, hey, 20 employees, how many of you are willing to get the vaccine? 18? Okay, well, the other 2 go away. You know, you can't work here anymore. And then where can you work? Nowhere, because all these corporations are going to become the little totalitarian states. You know, the government doesn't have to do anything. They're doing it all through the businesses, through policy, store policy. That's how this is all working. Like, my retail background is actually coming back, you know, full circle, because I've seen this kind of stuff happen on a lesser scale. And so that's just what I see coming. And I hope people have started to think about, how can I own my own life? Because I need the resistance to be strong, because I'm not getting the vaccine. And according to Ticketmaster, that means I'll never go to a concert again. And I need a lot of people at my party, so that my party, if they kick everyone out of the party, then, you know, where is the party? It's on the outside now. Right. So I need a lot of resistors with me, because otherwise it's going to get pretty lonely.
I'm with you, dude. I swear to God, we're with you. All you got to do is hit me up. Like we told, I was talking about this the other day. I was like, you know what? If we decided to, honestly, and I know I'm saying this out in the open now, but let's just say, if anybody decided to band together and do things underground, as long as they kept their mouth shut, we can have as much fun and live our lives the way we want. Honestly, but people, you know, if they're dumb about it, they're going to get caught, and it's going to get on the media, and then, you know, they're going to make an example out of you. But do we do that? like, is that smart to do? I think about that all the time. Like, is that smart to do? Like, I'm always thinking about strategies. Like, how do we stop this? Or how do I get my life back? Because I don't have that surrender mentality, man. Not one bit, you know?
Good. You're going to need that for sure.
It's just, the thing is I worry about my son. Like, I worry about the kids and their lives.
Yes.
Like, that's the saddest thing about this whole dilemma. Like, my son is about to turn 17 and he's not getting to experience that classic high school. I'm a junior, about to be a senior. Just all that. They've taken so much away from them and they don't realize that. And look, I know it's a cold that takes out people that have bad immune systems, but like at this point, more people are getting coronavirus, but less people are dying. It's just a bad cold, damn it. You know, I'll say it. Like, it's a really, it's a cold that's worse than any kind of cold we've ever had.
But you telling me it's not a little bit fun for him? Like, high school kids aren't having a little bit of fun with like a 12-month vacation.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I think about that a lot. I would love to be 10 years old right now. That would
depends on how much you hated school, but yeah.
No, you love school. I mean, kids are still, if you don't think that you're going to die from the virus, people are still hanging out. Like, you think friends aren't going to hang out? I just saw my college friends last weekend.
Yeah, that's my point. And people call me and say, man, well, we can't do this and we can't do that. I'm like, I just drove across the country twice. Nobody stopped me from doing a damn thing, you know?
Well, what's lucky for all of us is we seem to have friends and family who are willing to risk it to be around us. And with 9/11, you know, it's like, sure, back in the day, the thing about conspiracy theorists is they always want to explain to you what went down. And there is that tendency. But if my friends and family think 9/11 was terrorists on a plane, what difference does it make? It doesn't make much difference. We can still enjoy each other's company. But with this conspiracy, if they don't see through it, they're afraid to see you. They're afraid, you know, like you've been ostracized. It's like back a few years ago, there was a lot of speculation that they were trying to paint conspiracy theorists as terrorists. Well, it's almost like that because you're a biological terrorist. It's like you're a social pariah. And a lot of people are just very scared. I wouldn't say lost friends, but there's definitely friends where our friendship is strained because they won't leave the house. It's like, well, how good is our friendship? But I have other friends who we get together, and once they're in the house, we crack a few beers, and who cares about the outside world? Nobody cares. You know, we're sharing joints, and nobody's thinking too much about it. But then, you know, you also have people who they have a partner who's very paranoid. And it's like, I don't want you going over to Greg's if he's going to have 8 guys over. Like, how many people are going to be there? What did they do this week? And it sucks. Some people are stuck. They might see through it, but their partner doesn't. And so now that dictates what they're allowed to do. But I'm very, very lucky that the people I care most about, even though some of them would get the vaccine, some of them do think there is a virus out there, some of them don't have much of a problem with all these measures, they're still willing to see me. And that's really, at this point, the bar is very low for what I'm willing to accept. And if we can still have fun on the weekends, have some laughs, release some endorphins. I mean, I've had about as good a 2020 as a person can have, considering all this stuff. And so I'm just very fortunate in that respect. I hope we have networks of people that are willing to risk it for us. And if you don't, think about that. Think about why a little cold and some hyped up media is enough for people to just stay away from you.
Yeah.
Be more fun than the virus is scary.
Yeah.
Well, that's been something, man, that I don't know if you have, I guess you have based on what you're saying, but I've been going through this kind of thing in my life where I'm like, all right, I need to like trim the fat here. Because look, I don't have to tell you, Greg, or anybody that's listening, if you start to know enough people start to suck you dry in a way that I don't think they're aware of, and you can't blame them for that. But at some point, you have to get down to it and say, all right, which one of these some bitches is going to back me up in a bar fight, and who's going to hide behind the jukebox? You know?
Yeah.
Like, you got to know. I think
it's true.
You know what I mean? And it might hurt when you take a real hard look at it. It might hurt, and you might say, damn it, you know, I really have to cut this person. But I think it's going to be in your best interest, honestly, for whatever the hell is coming, to know to feel stable with people that are around you that got your back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And make sure you're that fun person too. Make sure when
Exactly.
you enter a room, like you're raising the vibe of that room, you know, like
Exactly. Especially this year.
Yeah.
People are really in a stressed out state. They don't want more problems. Bring solutions, and not even necessarily solutions in the sense that you need to conspirasplain everything to them. A lot of people don't even want to hear that either. So I'm in a weird position because everybody who knows me can hear my thoughts in their totality online in a big old catalog. And so to me, that's enough. I don't ever really bring up any of this stuff, any of the conspiracy stuff, unless I had a few drinks and it gets out. I try to keep it in because, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like, they could figure it out. They see my website. They've seen social media posts. Like, they'll like a picture we had on the weekend, and then they'll see on Monday that I'm releasing a show with Andy Kaufman that viruses aren't real. So it's like they definitely could venture down any road they wanted to. And so I'm just like, and also another tactic is if you've spent a lot of time with people who are fearful, you can say, well, you know, look back to all the things we've done this summer. Neither of us are sick. Why get scared now? And it's kind of a race to have as much fun as you can, because I do have a buddy who really, he hasn't gone out much this year. I love the guy, but he just got a call that a guy that he works with in the office, that guy's wife got COVID. And it's like, okay, well, so you could have had all this fun with me and you'd still be in the same boat, you know, because now he's worried that he's 1 degree away. It's like, well, it's a race to have as much fun as you want, because if you got to go to work, you don't know what your coworkers are doing. They're probably going out and seeing this person and everybody else. So why not just acquiesce? You know, driving on the highway is a risk. Everything is a risk. All of a sudden we got all worked up about this one particular risk and forgot about all the other ones we take on a daily basis, minute to minute.
Yeah, you're right about that 100%. That's those people, though. I think it's a weird mentality. And I think that what's happening is they're trying to kick us into this fight or flight mode all the time. Dispenza talks about that. I put a video into the chat room. If you guys want to go to the chat room, it's the fringe.fm/chat room, but it's way up the video log now. I should have pinned it, but he put it in there about how that triggers uncertainty, triggers these fight or flight fear responses. After a certain amount of stress, it starts to trigger those things, you know, and that's what's triggering everybody, man. There's another video we put in the chat of this KGB guy that talks about subversives and how they purposefully do that. And it's, once you start going down that road where you see, Harvard studies about how they try to convince you that you're a bad person. Like, they literally have studies. I know on Ryan Gable's site, he documented this, where they literally have studies about how to convince you to get them to do what you want when it comes to taking a vaccine. And they have like control groups of people where they're influencing them via fear, guilt, narcissism, gaslighting. They do it all. And why would they want that? That study was out like a few years ago before any of this come out. It's not random. It's just like, at some point we got to say, hey, like, I got to be in control of my own mind and my own fear. And, speaking of Magick, I know not everybody loves Crowley, but that's what he said. He said, fear is the thing that will bind you for sure. For sure.
Yes. And if you get into that idea of does your mindset really manifest reality? Maybe you don't have to do sigils. Maybe all you have to do is be like, oh my God, I'm going to get sick 24 hours a day. And then what happens? And I also think people should recognize that there is a metaphysical component to health that the entire system of Rockefeller medicine and the CDC is completely dismissing because they only promote the materialist paradigm. And that's something to remember when you're thinking about your health, because your state of mind, the amount of sunlight you get, the structure of your water, like, there are so many factors that matter that aren't, did you get the right pill from Pfizer or the right vaccine from Pfizer? It's like they really are removing a lot of that from people's Rolodex of knowledge. And it's in a lot of different areas. Fuel, ether physics, magic, obviously, but there is a metaphysical component to so many different slivers of the pie. And they're all the things we talk about on many shows, you and I, with all these guests. It's always what's been suppressed, what's been left out. Well, when you look at the health box, a whole lot of stuff's been left out. And it's really just about armoring yourself up to have the most robust immune system you can. But that takes a lot of work. People would rather just throw a mask on. Oh, if the news tells me I put a mask on, then I'm safe and I'm healthy, that's fine. Well, I'll tell you, I've seen a couple people walking around Walmart. Looks like they've never thought about health a day in their life, but they got that mask on with some false sense of security. And it's like, no, when you own up to the fact that, you have more to do with your health than you realize. Getting COVID isn't like getting struck by lightning. Getting sick isn't like getting struck by lightning. Autoimmune disease. These are things that emerge when you live a toxic life. And really what you need to do is make sure you're getting high quality food, good animal fats. I don't want to offend the vegans out there, but it's a paradigm. There's a lot of stuff in good quality meat that is not it's almost night and day, the meat you get in the grocery store versus what you're going to get from a local rancher. I learned things from this local rancher I had no idea, like USDA meat. You're required, the butcher or the processing plant is required to add lactic acid to that cow. So we see USDA and we think, oh, that's the highest quality. That's the highest standard in America. But all food that reaches that standard is altered in some way. And I don't trust the arrogance of these people. I think the system is very complex, but it's well designed. So I go with the design of the system usually over the tinkering from some corporation that thinks they got it all figured out. And it's just so true for health. So as much magic is a real thing, I also think that you can apply magical philosophy and principles to health and be in a better place than Rockefeller medicine will take you.
Yeah, well said, man. Yeah, I've been totally with you on that. And I haven't lived the best of healthy lifestyles, but I lived in an area. Shoot, we were at the top of the hour, but I lived in an area where there was no place to buy health food or whatever. And people are like, oh, I feel sorry for you. You just don't have the same stuff that my city does. But I'm a country boy. Like, that's not an excuse. It's not an excuse for those people that say we don't have that stuff. It's not an excuse. You can hunt, you can fish, you can grow your own garden, you can get a community garden together. You can do there's no excuses anymore. Either say, I don't care, or you just be honest about it and stop making excuses. I think that's the biggest thing too, right?
Very much so.
And
it's hard. It's fucking hard in this system. I mean, it really is. Like, you have to put so much energy and attention into removing toxic things from your lifestyle. It's tough.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that. We're at the top of the hour. We're going to open the phone lines up. Look, if you want to talk to Greg Carlwood,
yes.
Now's your chance. All right. So you can call in at 1-800-588-0335. Wait until we come back though, because I may not grab your phone call, because it's top of the hour, man. Grab a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever you got to do, man. We'll be right back with Greg Carlwood from the Higher Side Chats. Stay with us.
ancientlifeoil.com. Are you stressed? I mean, who isn't? Anxiety creeping in? No, not that. Is sleep like you a pain because your brain just won't slow down? We're living in crazy times, and the fear knob has been turned up. Okay, there's an answer. Take a big breath, exhale, and go log on to ancientlifeoil.com. CBD, broad and full spectrum, organic and non-GMO CBD for you to enjoy. Change your tune from fear to calm. from brain overload to clear thinking. 0.003 THC on full spectrum and 0% THC on broad spectrum. Competitive pricing with the best quality. Also know everything is going to get better. No worries. Be happy. CBD can help calm so your nerves don't think they're a 6-string electric guitar. Enjoy life, smile, and log on to ancientlifeoil.com for great CBD. That's ancientlifeoil.com. You'll be glad you did.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
And you're listening to the Fringe FM. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, the
this
best
is
revenge
the
is
Report
success.
News on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Roogie. NASA is ushering in a new era with the first operational launch of SpaceX Crew Dragon, carrying 4 astronauts. NASA launched astronauts to the International Space Station over the weekend. This is the first government-certified flight of a commercially developed SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft. Phil McAllister, director of the commercial spaceflight development at NASA headquarters, said, "Not only can NASA transport our astronauts to and from the International Space Station with U.S. systems, but now, for the first time in history, there is a commercial capability from a private sector entity to safely and reliably transport people to space." Make way for progress. A well-known ancient site will be getting a tunnel built near it, which could lead to the loss of 500,000 artifacts. According to The Guardian, Professor Mike Parker Pearson fears the scheme will cause irreparable damage to a largely unexplored ancient landscape. The World Heritage Site where Stonehenge sits is over 5 kilometers long, but the tunnel is under 3 kilometers. This means a dual carriageway will emerge from both portals within this unique and protected landscape, he said. There will be almost total destruction of all archaeological remains within its path. The agency's contractors only expect to retrieve 4% of artifacts in the soil during construction. And that's a lot of artifacts that aren't going to ever be analyzed. For you sky watchers out there, if you have a telescope this week, well, it's time to take it out. This week, 7 planets will be visible in the night sky. Venus and Mercury are bright enough to see in the mornings, while Mars, Jupiter, Neptune, and Saturn will be easier to see at night. Sky and Telescope reported the sale of telescopes has increased since the pandemic began, with companies seeing an increase in business from 60% to 400% over the previous year. There's still time to get a telescope. This is the Rogie Report News on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie.
This is Jason Lindgren from Crow 777 Radio, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
The Fringe FM.
Astral travel, magic, mysticism, and manifestation. What used to be heresy should be understood as our birthright. These are some of the topics we discuss on Lighting the Void, where we take you deep into the unknown. There are guest interviews, live on-screen calls, and me, Joe Root. Come join our family of explorers of consciousness, weeknights at 9 p.m. Pacific time to 11, right here on KTLK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
I
don't know all the answers to the questions about reality. I do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of the family of explorers of consciousness. I am a void walker. Hey, this is Macon, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Root.
All right, meow. Better see these phone lines light up. Because if y'all don't call in tonight, I'm taking away the phones, damn it.
Something once a month, and a lot of people would write me and say, hey, I've got some cool story to tell you, but I'm just too nervous to say it live on the air. I understand. I don't necessarily like to hear my own voice or anything like that, but I definitely didn't like working at GameStop, so this is like what it is. And so sometimes I don't necessarily feel like talking, but I gotta talk, and I think other people, just dive in. We're just having a conversation.
That's right. And somebody did. 504 area code. You're on the air with Greg Carlwood. Who are we speaking with?
504.
Hey, this is Dre. Eyes open.
What's up, Dre?
Eyes open. What's happening, Dre?
What's up, Saga?
What's going
on? The first one was, since you guys have been practicing magic, have you ever had like a weird experience where a deity was calling you, like wanted to work with you, but you didn't know what the hell was going on? And then the second question was, how creepy do you find astrology with how accurate it is in your life?
Oh, God. That's a good question.
Well, on the first question, I would say no, I haven't really had that experience. And I really I shouldn't even say I practice magic. I say I tried magic a few times, and I'm energetically dense. I don't really... Yeah, I've dabbled, and I've done enough to feel like it works. And it's also, magic is such a broad thing. Like sigil making is way different than doing the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram or going to the crossroads to meet the Dark One. I mean, you can have offerings, and it can get quite weird. But I try to stick to the more mundane, I guess. I don't try to contact high-level deities directly. And because I'm a little scared.
I don't blame you.
And so, yeah, and astrology, yes. Both Gordon White and Austin Coppock. Austin Coppock is really kind of Gordon's right-hand man when it comes to astrology. He's one of the best out there. I've had Austin on the show many times. But I went to an event that they threw in Portland last year when we were going through a bunch of Trump craziness and an impeachment, and everything did seem quite chaotic. And they said, this is nothing. 2020 will be way crazier. Because someone in the audience was like, when did things go back to normal? They're like, there is no back to normal. We're on a long road to nuts.
Oh,
and
God.
It's in the stars. You can look up and you can tell, how chaotic or calm the space weather will be, as they say. And they predicted, I mean, they just read it. It's not even much of a prediction, but they just read it and said, yeah, it's going to get way crazier. And it has. So I feel like Austin has been on the money many times. I think he's a trusted source, but obviously there's many astrologers out there, and it is kind of like a mathematician. Like, there is some skill to it at a certain high level, but really you're just reading the formula with accuracy. And a lot of people have probably been able to do that. And yeah, this year is crazy, and it was foretold to us.
But what about you, Dre? Like, I know you practice magic. What do you think about the accuracy of astrology? Is it freaking you out?
Astrology, it doesn't really freak me out, but it does kind of blow my mind the deeper I keep studying it and learning just how much information is available from reading the sky and all the placements there, then your chart, and then the transits and how they interact with each other. And like, it's kind of amazing just how much everything's laid out if you know how to decipher it. Like, you could read your entire life if you knew how to decipher all the different points that you can find and all the different placements and all the different aspects as time goes on. That part is absolutely nuts to me.
Yeah. Well,
because it answers the whole fate or free will question. It's like, well, it's not really a question anymore.
Yeah, I get that. And I appreciate your call too. Thanks for asking that. I really believe that there's these energies. I don't know what you think, Greg, but based on what you've experienced with it, that there are these like energies that play out in your life, like these same stories that kind of keep playing out in our lives. But what we do with it is up to us. It's kind of like the video game thing, the simulation idea, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And astrology is not my strong suit. It's hard for me to talk about the trines, the squarings, all this stuff. But I've had my chart read several different times, and it's usually people who know what I do already. So a skeptic would say, well, they're making the pieces fit. But Mercury, in my particular chart, Mercury and Jupiter are doing something in conjunction with each other. And Mercury, of course, is communication, and Jupiter is like bigness. So, and it's in a particular house, I think, that deals with my career. So, what is my career but conversations that go out to a big audience, quote unquote big. I'm not saying my audience is huge, but it goes out to small communications, but that go out to many people. And so my astrology, it fits really well with what I ended up doing. And I think there's many paths to your true path, your life path, but this is how mine manifested, and it does seem to reflect in my chart, oddly enough.
Tapped right into it. Did
you do Michael Wan's Starboard sessions?
Oh,
too?
I haven't done one of those. I have not done one of those.
He's one of the great.
Yeah, he's the best.
Really good. I think his Starboard sessions are great because you get a little more of a visual. It's he sends it in an MP4 or like a movie file, so you can always go back and reference it. Sometimes I'll get a reading done and I'm so just trying to listen and I'm not taking any notes, and it's so dense that I'm like, wow, that's gone. The Skype call's over now, and I remember 4 things that were said. So to have that is really great. And he also makes it very meditative, and he had at the time an add-on with like some kind of intention prayer. So I don't know, it helped me get into a meditative headspace, which has been hard in the past. That's one area. I don't know if it qualifies as magic, but I've definitely been pretty consistent with meditation recently, and I do think it's a valuable thing that most people should be doing and probably aren't.
I believe you. I don't know why I'm saying that. I totally agree with you. 702 area code. You're on the air with Greg Carlwood. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, Greg. And I'm not sure who the other guy is, but I'm Jim.
What's up, Jim? What's on your mind?
Jim? What's happening?
Hey, so I'm sorry. I just saw the tweet, and I apologize for not knowing what you guys are all talking about, but I got pretty baked out back by the fire tonight.
Nice.
And,
nice, dude.
And I'm just what I tend to do a lot is I like to sit in my backyard, build a little campfire by myself, maybe a small bourbon, and get baked. And then when I look up at the stars, it makes me think. They say space goes on for infinity, right?
Yeah.
So if that's true, and by the sounds of it, most experts in that field believe it to be true, that means that, like infinity, it never stops, which means by definition of never stopping, there's another universe where you're me and I'm you. And there's another universe where that homeless guy, on the street living in a tent is me. And it just makes me feel overwhelmed with, like, disappointment in that we judge people, and that we lack empathy, and that we don't realize how fucking blessed we are to be what we are right now. Most of us, right? You, me, certainly those in this country. And we should just be so fucking compassionate to other people, and the selfishness and the greed and the fact that there are billionaires and that there are people who don't know where they're going to get their next fucking meal from in this same country is bullshit. And that's not what we're supposed to be.
Yeah, you know what?
I'm rambling. But
I told myself.
I feel like Greg would appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do, man. I do.
Thanks for that, dude.
It's also one of those things that you realize since the beginning of time, this is what people have been doing, getting into an altered state and staring up in the stars. And it's as impressive today as it was then. And that is why these things are all like slightly veiled, like, the city lights block out the stars. Meditation isn't taught in school. Psychedelics are illegal. Like, they've tried to push this stuff, anything that can inspire an ecstatic experience or a higher state of consciousness, they've tried to weed it out. I think that's why they give us so much junk food. If you don't treat your body like a temple, it is harder to sense subtle energies. It is harder to reach higher levels. It takes some work. We're not all going to be Tibetan monks, but we can have the insights that were just shared there. And it's like, yeah, we should have compassion and empathy for other people around us. And we should strive for a better world. And looking at the infinite space out there and realizing that you're just one little speck in it, I think is helpful to really humble a person. And I just love that people are doing that in 2020, despite, the news's best attempts to keep everyone tuned in and keep their attention. You can still go out and tune in to the stars and have the same kind of insights and kind of magical thinking that people have been having for millions of years. Pretty cool.
Yeah, you should definitely. It's medicine, for sure. Like, it's definitely conscious medicine. And I appreciate your call, brother, for calling in. I got to open up some of these lines because they're filling up. Thank you, Dre. Yeah. Thank you for calling in. 949 area code. You're on the air with Greg Carlwood. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, this is Austin Hart. How you doing?
Austin, what's up, brother?
I just want to apologize to my coworker Cody today. He's like this gnarly salesperson, totally aggressive, totally like chasing the money all the time. And like me and the design team, we're just trying to sort of like appease him, and we're trying to help him out, but he's just like, he's always just, we got to get it done now. We got to get it done now. And Cody. I blew up at him today, and I just wanted to apologize to him for blowing up at him.
So, Cody, if you happen to be listening to the show, which I don't know why you would, because I don't know who you are, but do you think he's listening right now, brother?
Cody's listening.
Is he listening?
It's classic Cody.
Classic Cody. All right. And so he said he's sorry.
There's one taxi cab confession.
Yeah.
That's a great call.
You got anything you want to ask our guest tonight, Greg Carlwood? Or what's up, brother?
I guess. I mean, Greg, have you blown up at one lately and just felt kind of bad about it, and just I don't know, because like, I feel like we all kind of do that to our coworkers, our colleagues, or even people that we are forced to work with, and
any Codys in your life?
Want to, but we just have to.
No, can't say I've ever had that experience.
Awesome.
No, I'm just kidding. Of course I have. Everybody has. Retail is a high stress environment. Our job is we don't really want to be there, so sometimes we let Cody have it. But he bounces back.
Cody's tough. He's resilient.
Name Cody.
Yeah.
He knows that it's going to be a rough road.
Thanks for your call. That was probably the weirdest and oddest call I've ever received, but I think Cody feels good.
I love it. I think that's because I tweeted out the phone number, And so maybe some people are like, "Oh, a phone number. I'll call it randomly."
Yeah,
and
that's great.
Well,
like
that's
this
for
is
sure.
Some church confessional or something.
Yeah.
513 area code. You're on the air with Greg Carlwood. Who are we speaking with? 513. That's you. Dylan, you got to go. When you got to go, you got to go. That one got nervous, I think. 323 area code. You're on the air with Greg Carlwood. Who are we speaking with?
Hey guys, my name is William. I'm a big fan. Been listening for a long time. Just wanted to call in and make a comment on the past caller's statement about the infinity of the universe.
Uh-huh.
I read a really cool article recently about black holes, and it's pretty amazing how they kind of exist out of space-time. And, we have all these entities that seem to exist out of space-time. And when we look at solar eclipses and we look at how the moon is the same size as the sun, I mean, that just blows my mind, too. So I guess what I'm saying is to that guy, see, not only is the universe infinite, but on top of that, the universe is a place where space-time probably isn't the underlying foundation of it all.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, right? Like, are you smoking weed right now? I'm just curious, just like the other guy was.
No, actually, no. I don't even really smoke weed anymore. But
so you don't have to smoke weed. There. You don't have to smoke weed to look at the stars. All right. So the lesson learned there.
No, you don't.
But it's better.
Anyways, y'all, I always enjoy the show. I'm a big fan, and y'all have a good night.
You're a big fan of Greg's whose show? Greg's or mine or both?
Of your show, Joe. I've seen all your shows for a couple of years now, man. First time I've called in though.
My show.
You're first time caller. You know what, dude? Yeah, I'll be texting you.
I'm definitely gonna check out the higher side chats though. It's the first time I've heard of them, so I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Sure, you got it.
You're not missing anything.
You won't listen to this one anymore. Thanks for your call, brother. Appreciate it.
You got it. Have a good night. Bye.
Hey, Greg's bringing in the first time callers. You guys, I appreciate that. You guys are getting out there, so that's good. 501 area code. That's my hometown. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, Joe. Hi, guys. This is Sammy.
Hi, Sammy.
Hey, Sammy.
I just wanted to say I'm liking the messages you're putting out, and we're all magical. And people, after all that's gone on this year, try to remember this. Actually, if you flip it, you've been given the perfect opportunity to get closer to the people that matter to you right now and teach those young people about the universe and connecting and what it is to have peace of mind. Do your magic. Allow the corporate government bullcrap to have their illusion and be doing your magic. You're magical people. We all are.
We're all magical people. Thank you.
Yeah, we are.
Thanks.
Sure.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Thank
we need
you, Sammy.
Well, I'll save that for a sound clip for later on too. All right. Sammy's so sweet. Let's see. 603. You're on the air with our guest tonight, Greg Carlwood. Who are you speaking with?
Hi, Joe. Hi, Greg. How are you? This is Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Hey, Katie.
Hey, Katie.
How are you? Long-time listener to Greg Carlwood's show, and of course, Joe Roop, you're right up there too. I actually put you both on while I'm working and listen to both your podcasts, so you're my top favorite. So it's actually kind of crazy to hear both of you talking to each other.
It's cool.
Anyway.
Surreal. Yeah.
But I just want to make a few comments because listening to the show, I was kind of really loving what you guys were talking about. But I live up in New Hampshire, so I'm right on the border of you, Joe, and Night Stalker too. I think you're on the phone.
Yeah, Mass, yeah.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot more hiking up here, a lot more outdoors, a lot more people getting back to nature. And I've noticed with the COVID stuff, everybody is really stressed out. They're not doing so well in life. But I notice when they go out in the woods, they're way more personable than they would be in normal day. So I'm thinking that, as much as this negative stuff is going on, seeing a lot of that positive stuff kind of is really bringing it for me too. It kind of opened me up, and I started noticing, and I think a lot of other people are doing this. They're kind of doing this, reevaluating their life. I even just took myself off of Facebook because I was just not getting anything out of it. So I've been disconnecting too and trying to look at what really matters. So just wanted to touch on that because you guys have brought a lot of that stuff up, but I wanted to kind of highlight that I've noticed that some people are actually going back to nature to seek that stuff out, group hikes and that kind of stuff.
It's a good place to go for sure. When you want to.
Great woods in New Hampshire too.
I mean, like Greg was talking about a minute ago, meditation is essential. I think at this point, especially if you don't meditate or something, I'm not trying to judge anybody, but you're missing out on some self-care and some peace. And look, there's some apps out there that you could really do you some good. And if you took those apps and you listen to them looking at the stars, or you go out in nature, I know it sounds woo and cheesy, and there's a guy puking in the chat room listening about it, but dude, I mean, it resets you, man. Like, we need reset sometimes. Greg's right.
And there's different forms of meditation too, because you don't just have to sit in a room for 5 minutes, try to clear your mind. There's walking meditation. There's different forms to really connect to, or at least disconnect from, that crazy thought that's going through your mind all the time.
Right.
I totally agree.
I mean, that is really the goal for people who don't have a lot of context for meditation. They think you're just trying to do nothing, but really you're trying to recognize that, thoughts flow through your mind the same way sound flows through your ears. If you really pay attention to the sounds out there, you hear them and then they're gone. If you really put a conscious attention onto your thoughts, some of them fade away. You realize you can control your thoughts rather than just being at the whim of them. Random thoughts come into our minds. Sometimes they stress us out. They put us in a fear state. They're not really what we want to be thinking, but they're nagging at us. Well, through meditation, you can learn to observe and then control those thoughts and not let them control you. It's a beautiful thing. We're already locked down, sitting at home all day. Download the Waking Up app or the Headspace app and get into it. What are you doing? I know the PS5 just came out. Put it down for a minute if you were lucky enough to get one. Learn about your own head.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big space in there. Well,
but I just have one question for Greg Carlwood.
Sure.
And I hate to do this to you, Greg, but I've heard you so many times talking to your guests and then you conclude. But if I were to give a 5-minute or a quick elevator speech of what you think the hell is going on, I'd love to hear it. I'll take that offline too. I appreciate it.
Great question. Thanks.
Oh, man. Well, I guess it just depends on, it gets to be a deep question. You want to keep going. You're like, where do I start? But really, I do think that materialism is one of the biggest operations going. And it seems like the cabal knows a lot about the esoteric layers of reality and have done everything they can to weed that out of society, whether it's the esoteric aspects of health or of energy or of just anything. And they want us to be focused only on what we can see in this material realm and getting more green paper. It's a big energy suck. And I kind of agree with Alex Jones when he says that he thinks the world is run by interdimensional child molesters. I don't think that's 100% wrong, and I was surprised to hear him say such a thing. But, give the guy a few whiskeys and it happens. But I really just think that there is a great, amazing system out there, and then there is a technocratic, materialist overlay, and that is where most of our problems come, and that's where most of our focus is. When you get out into nature, when you learn about structured water, when you meditate, you find that the system is quite awesome. And when you engage with the natural side of it and you unplug from the materialist overlay, it's way more fulfilling. And so I think that is the major goal, is to keep us from seeing the intelligence and complexity and beauty of the natural machine and have us rooted and focused solely on the, oily, smog spewing, Rockefeller, Rothschild, debt-based system of rule machine.
Yeah. But what about the giant spiders?
Well, you got that too. I mean, I only had 5 minutes, she said. Now we're going to go for 15. We can get into the spiders and the owls and everything.
Wait, what's up with the owls? Is the trippiest. Man, I've been seeing that omen for the past 6 months. It doesn't matter if people pull it. Yeah, it doesn't matter if people pull it like in a tarot reading or those little charms. Owls, I've had friends of mine that dream about owls. When I've heard them at night. The owls that are up here, they've been like everywhere. Owls.
Yeah, one flew in front of my car yesterday.
You need more Mike Clellan in your life, my friend.
I've had him on a few times. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then you're schooled.
Yeah,
Can you explain the
trippy.
the owls versus spiders thing real quick for everybody who's not familiar with that, Greg?
Well, Bohemian Grove everyone knows about, and they've seen that infamous footage of them carrying the torches in the redwoods, and there's the giant owl statue. Well, on the gates of Bohemian Grove, there's the phrase, "weaving spiders come not here." And so, it actually ties into Indra's net and that whole mythology. But we went down a rabbit hole with this Russian researcher, Hattie Bob, who would talk about these spider creatures out there. And we almost started to it started to take shape that there's these two factions out there fighting eternally over the souls of man, the spiders and the owls. And they have certain people are aligned to certain sides. I actually just interviewed a guy, Matthew LaCroix, who has a really great breakdown of the eagle and the serpent divide, and that he thinks these are the two symbols that have been, showing who the two sides are throughout history. And it's funny that now obviously the serpent has been heavily demonized even since the Bible, but now every nation has an owl on their, an eagle on their flags, and it's all about the eagle and the seals, and not the animal, the seals, but the seals with the eagle on them, and it's just like, wow, well, I guess by those fruits, I guess I'm more of a serpent person. But when you go into the Kundalini, it's always about the serpent energy rising. And he really broke it down. I would go back and listen to that. It took him like 45 minutes. I'm not going to do it justice. But Matthew LaCroix, really good at that eagle-serpent divide. And I really like narratives that kind of pit two sides against each other and go all the way back throughout history, whether it's reptilians and grays or whatever. I think that stuff is fun, and it's not like one is right and the others are wrong. I really do think there are different factions representing different symbols and ideas, and they are quite ancient. So it's a lot to unpack, but I think there's some truth to all of it in some way.
For any Mandalorian fans, there was just a giant spider in the most recent episode, I think. I haven't watched it yet.
Well, the one after that is a much better episode. Get ready. But that episode was okay. A little bit of a filler. But yeah, the spider was cool.
Man, I gotta catch up on that show. I gotta. Apparently, it's worth staying to watch here. The Mandalorian.
It's fine.
I'm not caught up yet.
586 area code. You're on the air with Greg Carlwood. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, this is James Salcido.
Hey, James. What's up?
James.
Not much. It's good to talk to you all, and it's nice to meet you, Carl. I've heard Carlwood. I'm sorry.
Hey, Carl, it's all right.
And I was thinking, Greg. Yeah, I was thinking Greg, and I said Carl, and I knew it was Carlwood. I don't know why I did that. But I was just getting back to a point that you mentioned earlier about how we're all supposed to be focused on only what we can see in the material world. I was just wondering, that made me think of all the recent, within a few years anyway, recent UFO stuff coming from everywhere, it seems, and how that fits in despite the whole materialistic view that we're supposed to have. I'm just curious about that.
Well, yeah. So are you asking Greg what he thinks about the, as far as UFOs go, like, and how that relates to the materialistic world? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm like, why we're so focused on the materialistic, but then not paranormal or metaphysical, but then we still have, officials and stuff putting out UFO stuff, whether it's real or not. They're still somewhere pushing it.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. Well, a lot of times the campaigns and programs run by these organizations are to take something true and then twist it to fit their own needs and narrative. And so, of course, UFOs are something metaphysical and multidimensional that have been seen since the beginning of time. But in our modern context, we have military intelligence telling us that it's some kind of physical threat. And when you really dive into the UFO thing, I think most people conclude that it's far weirder than just some silver spacecraft from Zeta Reticuli. It's a very odd phenomenon that plays on your consciousness, that, might even be some type of projection of some kind. Jacques Vallée is one of the deepest researchers of the metaphysical aspects to the UFO. And I think that is another one of those things. They do not want us to focus on that. And maybe that was something where the toothpaste was out of the tube already. They denied it for so long, since the 40s they've been denying it, that they finally figured out how to spin it to fit their own narrative. And of course, if you can create this fear that there are these crafts out there that defy physics as we know them, well, that's going to increase military budgets, because once you've gotten beyond, you've ran the terrorist narrative into the ground. You know, we've policed the world as much as we can. Now we got to go after this new invisible enemy. Once we finish the COVID narrative, then we got another invisible enemy, and this one comes from space in a silver spacecraft. And I think that they probably potentially have unlocked that technology so they can play that part in the play that they roll out for us. But the reality to me is that it's a much deeper and metaphysical phenomenon. And if it was really a threat, we would be destroyed. It might be some type of threat. Like, you know, there's cows in a slaughterhouse and they're having a good old time until it's a slaughtering day. You know, we might be on some kind of human energy farm. We might be harvested thinking that we're living these lives, but really we're just there fattening ourselves up until the harvest. And that's when you get visited by a gray in the night. And, you know, who knows? But I like those I like the idea that we're not the apex of this reality, that there's something up there that is very content with us feeling like we are. But when they need something from us, they can just extract it.
That is a kind of a scary thought. And thank you for your call, James. But it's not totally without, some legitimacy when it comes to conscious explorers like Robert Monroe and a few other people, even some of the girls that do Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda on the network. A lot of people have talked about that there's this parasite all the way back to Robert Monroe with his books that they saw in the astral realms that pretty much like sucks people's love energy and their sexual energy. And it's almost like they promote it and push it to an extent to get you to act upon your animalistic natures. And then once you do it, and then they drain it right out of you. I mean, think about it. Like, it's not a cool subject to talk about a lot of times. I get it. But I mean, how many times, if you think about all the times in your life that you felt absolutely awesome after, doing something like that, they're few and far between for a lot of people, but that's because of the way society is. That's one form of energy that's being sucked away from people that's been witnessed by, I would say, credible. I think Robert Monroe's pretty credible at the very least,
Yeah. Well, that's that thing, is that we are only taught materialism. So we don't have a lot of context for this stuff. There are people who have these experiences routine throughout their life, visited in the night, thrust into a state of fear, blacked out, and some entity feeds on them. And this seems to be happening to who knows how many people. Obviously, it's not the majority, I don't think, but how many people are out there who are afraid to talk about it because they've never heard of anything else like this? They're afraid to talk about it because all they hear about is, the Big Bang, and this is the only material there is, and there is no consciousness. It's just an epiphenomenon of the brain, and religion is stupid. Science has all the answers. People are not encouraged to share these kind of experiences. So we don't know how deep they go, and we don't know what's really going on with them because we just don't have enough context. With so many things that my guests talk about on the show, they'll say, look, there's some truth to this, but we need to study it a lot more because we just... We're missing 50, 60, 80 years of study because we've been denying it. So let's get over the denial and let's dig into the data and let's figure out what's going on here. And I think the experiences people have with some types of non-physical intelligence are definitely in that realm.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have any weird experiences, Greg, like that? Any astral experiences?
I saw a weird cryptid thing when I was young, and it was very brief, but I've never really had an ET encounter or a really serious UFO sighting or any kind of sustained contact without psychedelics. I've contacted a few things that seemed like disembodied intelligences on the astral plane through psychedelics, maybe just a handful of times, but nothing sober and nothing at night, but that would be quite scary, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I only got a little bit left here in the broadcast. You guys make sure you call in. It's now or never. 1-800-588-0335. Also want to plug the altar box real quick. If you guys want to check out the new tool for lighting the void, if you're a void walking magician and you want to do any practice, any magical practice, spiritual practice, you want to take it anywhere with you, travel into your room, doesn't matter where you are. It's a little suitcase that pops open into an altar, and it's got a scrying mirror, reversible chalkboard for your sigils, and a universal floor. Go check it out at lightingthevoid.com/altar box. I designed it out of my own brain. So
wow,
go check that out. Yeah, well, I came up with the design. You should check it out too, Greg. I came up with the design,
seeing it.
And I went to. It's pretty simple, right? It's nothing super fabulous, but for somebody that does as much magic as I do, it's something that I needed from moving out
Looks
of
amazing, man.
like a living room.
Cool.
Yeah, so I got together with this guy that the podcast host, the esoteric scholar, Brett, and I knew he had some really cool stuff on his website, My Stars and Planets. And I was like, hey, do you think you could make this? And he's like, I totally could make that. So we kind of partnered up and made that thing.
Badass. I know so many people, especially here in San Diego, in these 1-bedroom apartments, they don't have the dedicated space you're really supposed to have for magic. A lot of people say ideally you have a spirit room. Well, that's not realistic for a lot of people, especially when you got a quarantine grandma in the extra bedroom now. Now you need 2 extra bedrooms. One for the spirits, one for her. So it just doesn't work out. So the spirit box is this altar box is pretty awesome, man. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's a cool idea. But I got to tell you, man, the first ritual I did, and I've been trying to tell this story, but it happens to be not getting told. I did on Halloween night when we were having the after party at the Fringe Fest, and I was like, oh, it's 11:30 to midnight. I got to do my. It was it was a new moon. It was a full moon. It's like a blue moon on Halloween night. How do you not do magic during that? Yeah. Right. So I used the scrying mirror for the first time because I just got this thing. And I did I just wanted to face down my own demons. But people say like, well, do you see spirits or do you see this or that? It's totally like Gordon said when in his book, the Chaos Protocols, I think wasn't that his book that I got?
That's one of them.
Yeah. And he talks about the crossroads ritual where it's not necessarily like seeing the spirit. It's more like you just know, you feel it. Right. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, when you're staring at a black mirror and there's nothing but smoke, a little candlelight and a dark obsidian mirror and all you can see are the big bright whites of your eyes. It's creepy, man. Number one, but when the spirit comes through, and I wasn't calling any particular spirit, just calling upon the thing that was ruling my fears and wanted to talk to it. And I felt it like I got frozen from it for a minute, Yeah.
Wow, man.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
I don't think people, I don't know what you think about it, Greg, but I think when people think about like summoning spirits, they see these books and the Goetia and stuff, and they see all these like drawings of these spirits. And I'm not saying they don't look like that, but I think it might be different for everybody. Like somebody might see something in the smoke. Somebody might just feel it. I really think it depends on the person. And I think when say, oh, well, that's just your psyche. It's not magic. Well, I don't see how I kind of think they're the same in a way.
Yes. I agree. And, if you go back to, what is it? Thelema and the Holy Guardian Angel. There are people who have gone through many, many levels of this magical discipline to reach what they say is the highest goal is contact with your Holy Guardian Angel or your higher self or whatever. And when you talk to these people who have been dedicated for decades to this discipline, they'll still debate if the Holy Guardian Angel is a separate entity or if it's part of themselves. And the highest people on the ladder are still debating that. So who am I to say? You know what I mean? But it gives me comfort in how unsure I am when I hear these high-level people still trying to parse it out. And I think maybe it is all our mind. I think even our reality, like our consciousness is seated somewhere in like the center of our head. And everything is kind of like everything we sense is coming through this filter. So
Right.
what is real? What is the difference between a wave and a particle? It gets pretty esoteric and pretty strange. And so maybe you can psych yourself into seeing something, or, you know, if it's a homunculus or some kind of thing, like maybe you can actually create intelligence. Maybe your consciousness, you can break off a little piece of it and let it run free. There's some weird stuff out there, but again, it's one of those areas. It needs further exploration, and we need to stop denying its existence and dig in deeper.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I got something to say about that
Is
too.
that a thing? Like,
we take let's take this call real quick. Night Stalker 540 area code. You're on the air. Who are you speaking with?
Yeah, Joe, it's Michael in Virginia. How you doing?
Hey, what's up, Michael?
Hey, Michael.
What's on your mind?
Hey, I got a story. But a question: where did you get your scrying mirror? Is it obsidian, or did it come with that magic box?
It's the whole thing. Like, yeah, it's all one piece. The mirror comes with the box.
Okay,
So you can take the mirror out if you want to. Yeah.
About 3 nights ago, I've had like military helicopters flying over in formation over top of my house, and they're traveling east, like towards D.C. or Delaware. That's been happening for the last week, so I guess they're starting to arm up for something. I don't know, but there's a lot of it. 3 nights ago, I was in my house about 8 o'clock. I hear all this rumbling outside, and I mean, it's like really loud. It was like irritating the crap out of me because I'm watching TV and I hear this rumbling outside. And you hear this quacking going on and rumbling. So I finally got out and I went outside. And I was looking around, and the moon was out. But on the west horizon, it was just high enough you could see an orange moon, but just the crest of it, so it looked like a dome. Okay. All this rumbling's taking place, and I kept listening to it, and I was looking because I have the place that the guy has across the street or a road is a cattle farm. It's Angus, and so if they're out running around, next to the road, they sound kind of heavy. But this was like they were running up a wooden ramp that was on top of a dirt ramp, and then boards were on top of it, and they're clacking around. But the rumbling, what got me. So I ran outside. I was looking around. I saw the crest of the moon, which we don't have a moon right now. It's nice and orange. And I listened to the rumbling. It all stopped, and I started looking around. Well, I looked back, and there was no moon. It was a dome-shaped. There's no moon. So I kind of waited for a couple of seconds to see if the cows were coming back around. Maybe it was them, and I could hear them off in the distance blowing, but it just finished raining, so they're not going to make that kind of noise on the ground. So again, the rumbling starts. It was a little quieter, but again, the crest of the moon was back. And I kept listening and kept rumbling and clacking and stuff, and I just kept watching it, and I just happened to look away and look back, and it was gone again.
Huh. That's
and we
weird.
don't have a moon out right now.
You talking about?
Yeah, we don't have a moon.
Like, that's weird. Can anybody else confirm this? Like, what he's talking? Yeah, I don't know if it's weird about what you're talking about, or that part, or the part that cows were blowing. I don't think I've ever heard a cow blow before. Like,
you haven't? Oh my God!
These are Angus. You might be talking about Jersey.
Okay. Pretty cool though, man. Interesting.
No, I mean he's got some expensive cows. It's supposed to be expensive meat. But anyhow, I kept seeing that, and it's just kind of weird. I just thought that's kind of odd to see something like that because it's not the moon's not out, and it was definitely if it was a light, it was a dome light of some sort, but it wasn't like a structure was there. There's nothing there because when you see it during the day, there's just trees. There was nothing there. And I've seen this dome back in '95 and '97 out in Arizona. Same thing.
Huh. That's weird. Wow. Sammy, can you go outside and confirm that for us? Go out there and check that out. Black helicopters, weird moon stuff, blowing cows. Cool. Yeah. Well, hey, before we let you go, do you got a question for Greg? Do you want to ask Greg anything?
No, what he might think about it, if he's ever heard of something like that.
Well, since the moon is a hologram, it tends to show up in many different strange ways. But if you can see beyond the facade straight into the alien moon base, now you're really talking. But no, a lot of people see really weird stuff with the moon. I'm really into that stuff. I've also seen a lot of videos recently, people talking about dual suns. Yeah. There's a lot of footage out there of dual suns. And yes, light can do some weird, tricky stuff when it bounces off the atmosphere. And there's always an explanation for everything. Neil deGrasse Tyson will be happy to bring you back down to Earth. But maybe there's something weirder out there than we don't know about. People talk about Planet X. People talk about a binary star system. The moon is an anomaly. It shouldn't exist. It doesn't abide by any of the laws we tend to know about space. And I'm not surprised that the moon defied logic for you. That's what it does.
Yeah. Thanks. And thanks for your call, brother. Interesting. That was actually really cool. I still think to this day though, Greg, as far as the moon goes, like Crow 777 to me has got some of the most interesting footage, but there's a lot of people that they're always trying to debunk what he does. And he always has some pretty compelling stuff to come back with. But I don't know. Once it starts getting into this, everything up in space is fake and, there's nothing up there. I don't know, man. I'm not trying to judge anybody that believes that. I know there's some fake footage out there. I know there's obvious stuff that's not right. It's just, it gets to where like, all right, when are we going to define reality? Not that we should, but we got to have something to bounce off of. I almost cursed myself. We got to have something to bounce off of here so we can have a discussion, I mean, you can. You're Greg Carlwood, dude. And your callers, I'm not going to be hitting the red button tonight. It'd be like, to me, that'd be like if, I don't know, Sam Tripoli called in and I said, no, don't let him curse. I'll be hitting the red button all night. It ain't going to work.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I could have tried to be a little bit better than I have been, but yeah, the moon is strange. The dimensions are very weird. I think the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun and also 400 times closer to the earth than the sun. That's a little perfect for some people. If this is supposed to be, because you have to remember, the mainstream paradigm says this is all a random accident spilling out of the Big Bang. Our lives mean nothing. The universe means nothing. It's just random. Well, that doesn't sound random, does it?
No.
I mean, it's perfect. The sun is supposed to be so many degrees of magnitude larger, yet appears the exact same as the moon size generally. I mean, the moon fluctuates quite a bit, but generally they appear as the same size, but their distance isn't the same. Their actual size isn't the same. It's very weird. When NASA slammed that thing into the moon a few years ago, it rang like a bell for over an hour. What's that say? There's hollow cavities in the moon, at least, if it isn't fully hollow. I'm not sure we've ever landed on the moon. We've either never landed on it or we land on it all the time. I can't decide, but we definitely are not. The mainstream story that we launched, 6 missions, that's not real. I mean, come on. The power went out at the Super Bowl last year, and you think they got a feed from the moon in the 60s? Get out of here.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Before the mouse and keyboard was invented. I went to that room in Houston. I went to the Space Center, and kind of a funny story, but they have the control center set up, and you sit in like a theater seating behind glass. And when I went there, me and my buddies were in the front row, and the first seat was broken. So I had to sit, in the second seat, and then they followed. And then the tour guide's like, hey, see that seat that's broken? The Queen sat there, and then all of a sudden the chair broke and we haven't fixed it. And I was like, wow, I've never been that close to royalty, and I'm not surprised that her reptilian energy broke this chair, and now it's unfixable. But the point is, when you look at the room that they say was the control center, because they didn't control it from the inside, it's not like a car. So it's controlled from this center in Houston. There's no joysticks. There's no mouse and keyboard. It's just a bunch of buttons. How did you control this? We're spinning at thousands of miles an hour. The moon's spinning at thousands of miles an hour, orbits, rotations, and you dialed this in perfectly. If you would have launched it an hour later, you'd be thousands of degrees off. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. They didn't go to the moon, or they maybe go all the time. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Or they're like shooting videos in somebody's garage in a water tank, like we don't know.
Yes.
That's what it seems
Well, I just don't
right?
think that rocket technology is what went to the moon. They've either cracked the code of anti-gravitic crafts and they go all over the place, or they haven't. But they didn't
I
go.
think portal travel.
Yeah, could be for sure.
Stargate style.
Listen, we only got a few minutes here left. All right, so I had to shut the phones off. I'm going to do this because Night Stalker, I love you. I love you to death. Right.
Thank you, brother.
You get the
Love you
last
too.
question for Greg for tonight.
Oh man, the last question. I don't know if I have a last question, honestly.
Jesus
Christ. This has been amazing.
You let me down again.
Sorry. Well, what latest thing has tickled your fancy? What what's been the thing that's intrigued you the most for the last few months? Been the craziest rabbit hole?
Pretty good question.
You've heard of recently?
I would probably say Ormus, because I've been interested in M-state matter and alchemy for a long time. Alchemy is it's that same metaphysical application to chemistry, or it's like, you know, it's a cousin of chemistry, but with that spirit put back into it. And Ormus is basically M-state material, or it is like it's hard to even find the language for, but it's a branch of alchemy. And some people who are into Ormus say you can extract the spirit from these minerals, and it is the purest, highest form of these minerals. So when you take it instead of just the base material, the health effects are way greater. You could take Ormus and spread it in fields, and your yields for your crops would be way better. So I just think that it's that same spiritual overlay that gets removed from all of our sciences, that when you put it back in and you discover that like everything is permeating with consciousness and with ether, and you can extract this stuff, you can actually see it. It's kind of it's in a smoky form in some situations, as like a what is it? Jesus.
Precipitation?
Yeah. I didn't fucking do chemistry.
Man, I almost messed it up too when I was trying to say it. I glitched my brain out.
It is tricky to talk about, but if you watch this movie, All the Gold You Can Eat, there are some master alchemists out there like Don Nance who have synthesized some really crazy stuff. The M state of metals is the hardest, and so extracting that from gold apparently has really crazy qualities. Some people think that in the Bible, when they're talking about manna or powdered gold, this is what they're really talking about. When you look at some of these ancient cultures that were obsessed with gold, they're not that obsessed with the shiny yellow metal that we call gold. They're obsessed with the properties of powder gold, of synthesized alchemical gold. And that's a whole rabbit hole I hope people go down, because it's quite interesting.
I've been looking into that stuff forever too, man. Like alchemy is the ultimate mystery, and I think it's got a lot of answers there for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Lamb, we got to get out of here, Greg. Thanks for coming on. For sure.
Yes. Well, let me throw this out to your people too, because this is a very crazy year. It's a very polarizing year. And we had a lot of fun tonight, but I've interviewed a lot of guests about viruses, about this coronavirus in particular, about Bill Gates, about this agenda. And I don't want anyone to miss out on what these guests say. They're far more articulate and learned than I am. And so if you use the coupon code VOID, you can get a free week of THC Plus.
Oh,
you get the whole archive. You can download shows and keep them. Just make sure you cancel before that week's up. It's like Netflix or Hulu or anything. But there is no barrier between you and the knowledge that my guests have put out, which I think is pretty important. And it will armor you up mentally and physically in the wake of this crazy year, and the fact that the news has never mentioned anything about your immune system or stop eating at McDonald's, all these stuff. If they really cared about you and your health, it wouldn't just be about locking you down. It would be about building you up, and it clearly hasn't been. So listen to my people. They have the same PhDs and a whole different perspective. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Bro. Thank you for offering that to our listeners. Y'all take advantage of that, man. You're going to get some free content for a week. You can't beat that. You're going to get some of the best.
It's required listening for everybody too. This is one of the best shows out there.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the show.
That's to go to the highersidechats.com, do what he's saying there, sign up. Everybody let me know that you did it, please. Yes. And give Greg a follow on social media, man. We'll do this again sometime. Thanks for doing this, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
I love it. Thank you guys.
All right, you guys stay tuned for the Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. We're going to get out of here. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Good night.
Good night.